Hello and welcome to Armonico Consort's second live recorded performance in 4 months. Now, we're at the end of lockdown, and what do we decide we had to do? We had to take some of the most key elements from lockdown. 1, alcohol, 2, haircuts. And by bonding these together with music, we've done what we've done for the last 4 years. We found a way of introducing people to classical music that would never have engaged with it, with the help of the world's greatest and most eminent wine expert, Oz Clarke. In this program, we explore all sorts of ways of bringing music together through history, what inspired wine to be made in the way it is, what inspired music to be written. Some of these things you will not believe are true. Anyway, bonding and gluing all of this together is music, and that is where we are at our heart. But a very special mention must go to Roger Medwell, our president, because without his generous sponsorship, we couldn't bring this to you. If you would like to do the same thing and gift a concert to our audience during this period, please do get in touch with one of our development team. So Oz, thank you so much for joining us with this. I didn't recognize you when I picked you up at the station yesterday. The hairiest version of you I've ever seen. How do you feel about this?
Well, I'm very much hoping that Roger Medwell will actually sponsor a haircut for me. But Roger, I just add my gratitude to you, because without your support, without your generosity and your total belief in what we do at Armonico Consort, we couldn't be doing this. So thank you, old friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, Oz and Armonico, Drink to Music, Part 1.
Our intention is to amuse, entertain, and educate, and to inebriate. The precedent for this is excellent. Plato. In Plato's laws, he reasoned that in order for man to be receptive and flexible in the face of new ideas, he needed loosening up a little. And therefore he decided that alcoholic drinking parties should be the basis of any educational system. They called that extra chemistry when I was at school. So it is our aim today to offer you a multi-orifice-pleasing, quasi-synesthesiastic experience. Thank you. Yes. The synthesis of wine and song. It's a tried and tested formula. And a study by experimental psychologists at Oxford University has revealed that tasting wine in combination with suitable music increases one's pleasure by 15%. Although it's common knowledge that 88.2% of statistics are made up on the spot, including that one. But what is suitable music for which wine? Well, a gentleman called Clarke Smith in California has taken this concept to new levels. Mr. Smith is a winemaker and a professor who has tried to match music and wine depending on the mood they seem to encapsulate. It's his belief that wine resonates with its environment in ways we're just beginning to understand. Wine is liquid music. So, when wine and music match, they both improve the other. His suggested methodology for this is basically trial and error. So tonight we will be matching moods in wine and music to provide a sort of cultural terroir. Now, that's all pretty dry, basic academic stuff, so let us lubricate ourselves with some beer. And I've got here an IPA. I can hear it, I can smell it, and soon I'm going to taste it. Now, IPA is the quintessential British beer. It's the beer that made British brewing famous all around the world, and if you disregard lager, it is now the most popular, real, tasty beer style in the world. Now, why did it become so famous? Because it was the first ever pale ale which could travel. And why is it called IPA? India Pale Ale, because it could travel in a barrel all the way to India and stay fresh. How? Lots of alcohol and tons of hops. So, here we go. It's honestly, this is just my professional beer tasting hat on. When you taste beer professionally, you have to taste it on the burp. So that was on the burp to test the quality of the hops. And all I can tell you is the quality of the hops is very good. And one thing about this beer, it is a British beer. And I say this advisedly because we are in tough times at the moment. And one thing I would like to say is we have more breweries now than we've had since the 19th century. We have more breweries in this country than any other country in the world per head of population. So now is the time to support your local brewery. You're certain to have one. And it's the same old thing. In tough times, support your local greengrocer. Support your local fishmonger, support your local butcher, your cheesemaker, your winemaker, and support your local brewer. Because if we love the communities we live in and we want to keep them, we must let our communities make a living by selling the things they produce. If we don't let them make a living, we will all end up living in a ghost town. So here is the British beer, and make sure that you support your local brewer. I can hardly bear to go on. However, it is, by the way, essential throughout our entertainment that you drink during the musical performances. That's the whole point of this cultural experiment. And if you don't do this, then the experiment will fail and you'll be missing out on 15% of your pleasure. Is our audience enjoying that? Now, while we are enjoying our IPA, let's turn our mind to heavenly things. Because when it comes to beer, we have a lot to thank Christianity for. The flavor of beer, for a start. Hops are the most important factor in the flavor of beer. The Egyptians had flavored their beer with hops, but that was then, the practice of that was forgotten for about 2,000 years until it was discovered again in the 9th century by the good old monks, first in Bavaria and then in Picardy in northern France, where the hop grew wild in the fields, supposedly along with the cannabis plant. But that's a whole other show. When are we doing that one?
When we can get a sponsor.
Right. Anyway, they found that the hops made the beer taste far, far better. But the hop also has another incredibly important function as a preservative. It stops the beer oxidizing and going sour. The preserving power of the hop wasn't recorded until about 300 years later by a remarkable woman of God called Hildegard of Bingen. Hildegard was a German Benedictine abbess writing in the 12th century. In a chapter of her work Physica Sacra, entitled improbably De Hoppo, or Concerning the Hop, she states,
"As a result of its own bitterness, it keeps some putrefaction from drinks, to which it may be added, so that they last much longer."
Hildegard is an interesting character to investigate in an evening of music and liquid music. She was also a composer. Some musicologists credit Hildegard with writing the first opera. Botanists regard her as the founder of German scientific natural history. And there are those that credit her with discovering something else. What do we make of this, ladies?
When a woman is making love with a man, a sense of heat in her brain, which brings forth with it sensual delight, communicates the taste of that delight during the act and summons forth the emission of the man's seed. And when that seed has fallen into its place, that vehement heat descending from her brain draws the seed unto itself and holds it.
Well, thank you very much, Eloise. That's quite enough of that. This has all got a little bit filthy, so let us elevate the tone with a song of great eloquence and profundity from the quill of England's most distinguished composer, Henry Purcell. We tend to think that Britain has gone to the dogs, that alcoholism and the binge-drinking culture have got out of hand, but this is just not historically correct. A modern British adult consumes, on average, 68 litres of beer a year. This has fallen dramatically from about 300 litres a year in the Middle Ages. Some of you lot are simply not trying. Now, in the Middle Ages, they brewed 3 sorts of beer. Strong ale, which was very strong ale indeed, fairly strong ale, which was still pretty much a skull spitter, and small beer, which was about as strong as a draft lager in an Indian restaurant. And it was usual for those involved in manual labour to get through 10 pints of this a day as a means of slaking thirst. Now, the reason for this was that the water was pretty revolting and would probably give you typhoid. Beer, having been brewed up and fermented, was a dashed sound drink. Monastical drinking. A thing of wonder. Records from Burton Abbey in the 11th century list a daily allowance of beer for each monk, consisting of 1 gallon of strong ale, supplemented by 1 gallon of weak ale. That's 16 pints a day. And this weak ale was still probably about 3% alcohol, and it was the drink of choice for children and nursing mothers throughout the 16th century. Newborn babies were given it. It was given to invalids in the hospital. Well, one can turn to a higher authority for the reasoning behind this. Hildegard?
Whether one is healthy or infirm, if one is thirsty after sleeping, one should drink wine or beer, but not water. For water might damage rather than help one's blood and humours. Beer fattens the flesh and lends a beautiful colour to the face.
I couldn't have put it better myself. two ideas are more inseparable than beer and Britannia, thundered the Reverend Nigel Farage. I'm sorry, it was the Reverend Sidney Smith. And he was right. By the end of the 17th century, beer accounted for 28% of Britain's total annual expenditure. This was probably the most drunken century in English history, and the majority of the peasantry would have spent a large part of their adult lives absolutely clattered. Beer may have had a role to play in the death of Purcell. Returning home from the playhouse one night, drunk and very late, Purcell was denied admittance to his own home by an irate and fed-up wife. He lay down behind the dustbins, he caught a chill, and he died at the age of 36. I've got some anti-matte, some anti-shine if you want it. If the professional photographers wish some anti-shine, I do have it. I take no notice of the lower folk. They are lower folk.